What does sugar do to the gut microbiome, and why should people be careful?
Sugar clearly has negative consequences on the gut microbiome. The exact reason for this is not completely firmly established, but I'll take you into my understanding of it based upon what I've seen in the science. So, you can't argue that sugar, and by the way, when I say sugar, I just want to be clear that I mean refined sugar, like the powder form that we get that would be found in an ultra processed food.
Mm-hmm.
You can't argue that that sugar is making its way down to the microbiome to have a direct effect. It's clearly not. It gets absorbed almost immediately. This is the reason why you consume something that contains a lot of added sugar and your blood sugar spikes within an hour. So there's a different mechanism to it. And I believe that the mechanism is aligned with what I was just describing a moment ago, which is that when we spike our blood sugar, which we are prone to do when we consume carbohydrate without any other substances, which is what sugar is, pure refined carbohydrate. There's no brakes, only gas. You spike your blood sugar, and that actually has effects throughout the entire body. The excessive blood sugar that's in your bloodstream now, including in the gut microbiome, and it leads to the breakdown of the gut barrier. The gut barrier is a single layer of cells that lines the intestines, and it separates the inside of your intestines where the microbes live from your bloodstream. So when you break down the gut barrier, you are now allowing things to start to get across, which creates inflammation. And you actually create a snowball effect, not only of inflammation, but also that feeds back to the gut microbes and has negative consequences on the gut microbes. Sugar clearly drives and fuels dysbiosis, which is the word that I would use to describe a damaged gut. So, and this is, basically what I'm now calling out is this full vicious circle, which is a cascade that includes damaging the gut microbes, damaging the gut barrier, activating the immune system, which leads inflammation. And then we see the consequences that come from all of this, which is that now these systems are not working the way that they're supposed to. And it affects us, throughout our entire body, the way that we feel instantly, and also can really start to stack up, carrying that burden of inflammation over the course of time. And by the way, I should add a few sort of caveats here. That number one, when I describe sugar in this way, I'm referring actually to all refined carbohydrates. So I would include flour, because when it's a pure flour, we're talking about a pure carbohydrate, all gas, no break. There's no fiber to slow down the absorption. There's nothing there. And then the other caveat is that I have zero fears about fruit, Doug. Zero. And that's because fruit is not isolated pure sugar. Pure sugar only comes from ultra-processed foods where you are adding it, right? So I have no concerns that like blueberries or eating an apple or these types of things are problematic, because there's a balance that naturally exists where it's not just carbohydrate. There's also protein, there's also fiber, there's also fat that helps to achieve that balance. So this is, I just want to make sure that people are not fearful of fruit in the process of this conversation.
Explain why fructose isn't bad for your digestive system, because you hear a lot of people at times talk about the dangers of fructose and how it impacts your gut, how it impacts blood sugar, how it leads to body fat. And I know that you disagree strongly with that.
Well, I mean, I think that I think it depends on the context that we're referring to. So
Right.
like what did the question would be, what did you just eat?
Right.
Right. And if it's an ultra processed food with high fructose corn syrup, this is problematic for the same reasons that I just described a moment ago with refined sugar. Like this, we're talking about the same thing. And if we're talking about fructose that naturally exists in fruit, bearing in mind that once again, that fruit has other nutrients that include fiber and protein and fat, and the fruit has something that we would call the food matrix. So, for example, taking an apple and grinding it into a powder will have a different effect on your body than if you were to grab an apple and take a bite.
Mm.
I don't have concerns about fructose that naturally exists with these whole plant foods. I don't have concerns about that. My concern is when we do unnatural chemical extractions that neither you nor I are capable of doing, right? To isolate and purify fructose so that we can then use that as a building block to create ultra processed foods. That's no different than, I mean, there's like, I don't know, more than 50 different words that could be used to describe added sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And fructose is one of them, and high fructose corn syrup would be another one, and glucose, and you could go down the line. There's so many different things that we could call that, and to me, the physiology is the same.
This leads into my next question, which this has gotten a lot of attention over the last few years, and that is the impact of artificial sweeteners on the gut microbiome. I think it was maybe the end of last week, like Red Food Dye 3 or something. They just announced that the FDA was going to ban that sometime soon, and that
Yeah.
like took over the health and fitness browse page on the internet. And I think people are oftentimes confused. And some experts say, you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, and that these people, a lot of people, haven't mastered like a healthy diet. They're not exercising regularly. They're not managing their sleep and stress, but they're nitpicking at all these ingredients that they might see, they should be afraid of on the internet. And they feel like that's like the first step they should take. What is your position on artificial sweeteners, preservatives, etc., and how they impact the gut microbiome and our overall health?
Well, I mean, so I feel like my position is very firmly established. I have talked about this in both of my books today, and so, but I'll define it right now, which is to say that I have sincere concerns that ultra processed foods are fueling our disease epidemic.
Mm.
The average American, 60% of their calories comes from ultra processed food. Our kids, it's 70%.
Dang.
Yeah. I have 4 kids. That's a scary thing. This is what we're raising kids on. Doug, you and I, we grew up in the 80s, right?
90s, Dr. B.
90s for you? Okay, cool.
Yes, come on.
I grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
And look, when we were kids in the 80s, I mean, God bless our parents, it was just kind of the culture that, hey, here's this new wave of foods. Like, why would you not eat SpaghettiOs? Right? And Chef Boyardee and drink Kool-Aid. Why would you not?
Right.
And now we have an increasing awareness of these things. There are 10,000 additives that exist within our food supply. And when you subtract red number 5, we're down to 9,999. And Doug, you should know that out of these 10,000, that they have, if you add red number 5 to the list, my belief, as far as I recall and understand, is that there is less than 40 substances that they have taken off the market due to safety concerns. It's exceedingly rare for them to introduce something into our food supply such that we are the guinea pigs, because we don't know whether it's safe or not safe truly at the time that it's introduced. We're making a lot of assumptions because we allow it in through a loophole called generally recognized as safe, GRAS. So we let it into the food supply, and then like people eat a mix of different types of foods that again dominate our diet. But how do you define it? How do you define how much a person eats Cheez-Its versus how much a person eats Lucky Charms versus right? And it's like over the course of a lifetime, these are evolving targets built with a mix of many different ingredients. It's impossible to isolate exactly where the problems exist. It's really hard to do that when it's such a diverse mix. So, and now here we are, and we're sick, and we're asking questions. How can we make this better? And yet, here comes our government agency to take away this one food coloring that, by the way, wasn't allowed in cosmetics for 35 years due to carcinogenic concerns, but you could ingest it and put it into your intestines, which is much more vulnerable than putting it on your skin. And we were okay with that for 35 years. And they're going to take that away now, right? In the 11th hour, and leave all of these other things still in our food supply, still affecting us, still affecting our children. It's not right. It's not right. Now, to keep balance, because I don't want to make it sound like every single one of the 10,000 food additives is problematic. I want to be clear when I say that. I don't believe that's true. I don't think all 10,000 are bad. I just don't know which ones are bad. That's the problem. And I don't think that the current approach that we have is going to allow us to, with clarity, define that as early as possible. People have to get really sick before you realize there's a problem. That's the issue. So let me put it this way. This is the way I honestly feel. If you're waiting for your government to fix your problems are not going anywhere. That is the honest truth. The government is not going to fix it for you. There are way too many financial influences there. You have to become educated and empowered as an individual, and you have to make choices within your own life to protect yourself. So, and to me, it starts with a quite simple concept. I mean, there's many different variations on this, but like if we quite simply got back to eating real food, that's it.
Right.
It would be a massive step for health. Now, I would love to help people to also rebalance and actually address their fiber deficiency, because I actually think there's a huge thing to that. But if we just by itself got back to eating real food, we'd be a much, much healthier society than we currently are.
Right. So do you think people should be concerned with artificial sweeteners as they impact their gut microbiome?
Yes. Sorry for the tangential answer, Doug. So the answer to the artificial sweetener question is this, that artificial sweeteners may have 0 calories, but they absolutely come into contact with your gut microbiome because they're not getting absorbed. So, and because they come into contact with your gut microbiome, you should expect that this leads to changes within the gut microbiome. The concern that we currently have is that at least some of the artificial sweeteners are clearly affecting your metabolism and insulin sensitivity. And as a result of this, they've done studies where they'll take a person who's being fed artificial sweeteners and they'll transfer their gut microbiome into an animal, and they'll show that that animal now has diabetes. So we're not making ourselves healthier with these foods. And are there completely acceptable alternatives that a person could plug in? Yes. Simple approach, drink water. It's a lot less expensive. Also, you could take that water and you could put a squeeze of fruit, such as citrus, like lemon or grapefruit or whatever it may be. That tastes pretty good. Or you could put a splash of apple cider vinegar in there, right? We don't need to make it Diet Coke. You are not required to drink Diet Coke. And I just don't think that doing that on a consistent basis is healthy.